get started. Good morning. My name is Diane Burgess, and I am your county supervisor representing you in District 3. My district is one of the largest geographically. It includes Morgan Territory, and it goes out to Bethel Island, and it goes out to Discovery Bay and out to Camino Ta Sahara and Black Hawk. And then I have Antioch, Oakley, and Brentwood in my district. So it's pretty big. And so I think about you often, actually. I want you to know, even though you're geographically and population, not, a lot of people, I worry about you, particularly as we go into fire season. Thank you, Alicia. We have a great panel today, and we're not doing this. The reason why we're doing this is because we care. And I know that all the people that are on this panel are like me, and that we're thinking about you a lot, and we want to make sure you're safe. We have Chief Helmick, who's East Contra Costa Fire Protection District Chief of the district that you're in. And we also have Chief Marcucci, who is with CalFire. And CalFire contracts with East Contra Costa Fire. So while it may feel like that's your fire district, they're a part of East Contra Costa Fire Protection District. We also have Meredith Gerhardt, and I didn't see her. Is she here?
She will be on a few minutes late. She just sent me a note.
Okay. And she is, and we'll introduce her when she gets here. We also have Lieutenant Wooden, who is the head of the area in which Morgan Territory sits. And so he oversees the deputies that respond to emergencies in Morgan Territory. And he just recently joined us, a month and a half ago?
Yeah, about a month ago, man.
So welcome. And you have a great community to serve. We also have other agencies represented today for the Q&A, and that'll be Mike Giles from Public Works, Lieutenant Reed from Animal Services. We have Cameron Morrison from State Parks, John Walsh, or maybe Les Putnam from PG&E. We have Mike McCaffery from Hold Your Horses, and Officer Thomas from CHP. And this is just, some people that are part of the team that are thinking about fire as we go into fire, as we are now in fire season. So it was my intention to stay for this meeting. However, my 94-year-old father had a stroke, and he is being put into hospice right now, and I want to be with my family. But I did feel this was so important because I worry about you, like I said, and I want to make sure that we are getting the messages out to you. You need to work on that defensible space. We need to harden our homes so that when we're moving forward, if there is a fire, your property is protected. I'm also super, super, super concerned about this idea of evacuation. It is not a suggestion. It's not a recommendation. Unless it's said, it might be a good idea. But when they say you need to evacuate, I am really just asking you to just evacuate. We have first responders that are out there that are not necessarily even from our area. Sometimes there's mutual aid. There's people that are coming in the middle of the night that don't know the area, but they have signed up to help protect you. And our goal when you're getting evacuated is that we're protecting your property and not having to protect your lives. And when we're asking you to evacuate, you're helping protect our first responders, the folks that you know and the folks that you don't know that are going to show up from other areas to protect you. I need you to think about what items you need to bring with you and have it ready to go. And I need you to think about how you're going to manage with your animals, because I know you love your babies, your fur babies, and they're important to you. So I'm here just for a few more minutes because I wanted to really request that you look at where to get your notifications. And I know that word of mouth is great. I know that Facebook and other social media can be helpful, but when you get a request to evacuate, it's not a time to be discussing it with your neighbors of whether or not you should go. It is time to go. And furthermore, the information that you need is coming from the people on this panelist. And if there's something that doesn't make sense from what they're saying and what you're hearing, you need to go to the source. Rumors could be deadly. Rumors could affect your property. Rumors could affect the lives of our first responders. So I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you putting your time in to be at this meeting. And I wish you all to be safe. If you haven't been vaccinated for COVID yet, you don't even need an appointment. You can show up, email my office, and we will get you set up. Because if you have to evacuate and you have to be around people, I want you to be safe. So thank you very much. I hope I'm not being too pushy or whatever. I'm going to go be with my family, but I really wanted to show up and let you know that this is really important. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Alicia, who is my staff person. I have Leah Castleberry and Don Morrow, and they are going to take it away from here. Thank you all.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for coming. I am actually just going to be handing it off nicely to Chief Brian Helmick.
All right, good morning. Welcome everybody that are here. My thoughts and prayers go to you, Supervisor Burgess. I'm sorry to hear that you're dealing with that. And that kind of puts things in perspective of what's really important around here. But again, our thoughts are with you, and I do thank the supervisor for providing this opportunity. As she stated, in regards to the speakers that we have today, we are going to be going through a list of panels. For myself, it will go from myself to Fire Marshal Steve Albert, which I'll introduce here in a moment, to Chief Mike Marcucci from CalFire, to Lieutenant Wooden of the Sheriff's Office, and then from the OES and from the Community Warning System to Meredith, which she will be closing it out. Those are the scheduled speakers that we have here today. We'll obviously open it up to a Q&A. As a little bit of housekeeping, I think that none of us anticipate for this to be an open and ended conversation. I think there are going to be many things that we may discuss here today, and or questions that may come up that may not be able to be resolved, but we'll continue to work through them with you through our respective agencies or collectively. Furthermore, one thing I want to really stress and that I encourage is, as this is intended not to be only informational, it's also intended to be educational to some degree. With that being said, I encourage all of you, if you have the ability to get something to take some notes, maybe get a pen and a paper and take notes down, or even jot down any questions that you may have. And again, we will do the best we can to address them. Although we have the speakers, we really want to spend a lot of time and provide Q&A. And again, at the question and answer at the end, and we'll do the best we can to address them. Prior to getting into the topics that I'm going to be sharing, prior to moving it to Chief Albert and then Marcucci, is that prevention is equally as important as response. And I think that's the intent and the reason why we're here today, is the front load and to prepare the best we can in preparation for the fire season. There are many things the fire department is doing to be able to ramp up and prepare for the fire season. There are things we're doing directly with you within the community to provide community risk reduction. There are many of you out there that are very vocal within your community. Not only those that are primarily citizens, there's the the Boarding Territory Association. I do want to thank all of those that are heavily invested and care greatly about the community that are out there. One thing I want to do is put out a disclaimer, as I do know, and I'm very aware that there's a lot of questions and maybe even concerns about many things, about emergency response and why we're here. Although everything will not be addressed and resolved here today, I'm very much invested with the supervisor and our partner agencies to continue to work with you throughout these complexities. So by no stretch are we in the best situation that we can be, but I can tell you with everyone that's involved in the room, although at times conversations are challenging and yet courageous, we are making good progress. I think better progress in the communities than historically we ever have. And I do know at times that does create a little bit of sparks, but I think that's okay. And so I do welcome that. The things that I'm going to be covering with you are to reinforce, again, our service area for the district, who our partner agencies are, where our borders and boundaries end, and the agreements we have with CalFire. I will also, there's a lot of information right now about the fire hydrants on Morgan Territory, which I'm going to highlight and address and talk to you about the plan of action as we move forward. I'm also going to highlight about the district service level challenges and what the district is working to increase service levels and add not only more firefighters, but more engine companies into our jurisdiction. And then I'll introduce Chief Albert, which will dive into prevention measures, defensible space, weed abatement, methods to harden your home, give you an update on the community emergency response team program that we're working on in collaboration with the association, and developing a Firewise community. And then we'll punt it over to Marcucci, which he will talk about a fire season outlook, the ramp up with CalFire on the fire season, and then he'll introduce to you the Get Ready for Wildfire, Ready, Set, Go program. So a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I'm going to jump right into it. So it's important, I think, for decades, there's been a misconception about who provides service to and who's responsible for fire protection within the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory corridor. East Contra Costa Fire is the primary fire agency. We are your fire district. However, we do have partner agencies that we work with. The areas East Contra Costa Fire serves are Brentwood, Oakley, Knightson, Bethel Island, Byron, Discovery Bay, Marsh Creek, and Morgan Territory, 250 square miles, approximately 128,000 residents that swell to about 155,000 residents when you talk about those that come into work within our communities. We have 3 fire stations, one in Brentwood, one in Oakley, and one in the unincorporated areas of Discovery Bay, but we do partner with CalFire. And the CalFire Sunshine Station on Marsh Creek is the station most closely located to you. And we have been in partnership and agreement with them, and we will continue to be in partnership and we will work with them. And we have a contract, that's the mechanism that we utilize to work with them. It's called the Amador contract. We fund that every year. We invest between $500,000 to $600,000 a year to make sure that that station is open year round. If the Amador agreement did not exist, CalFire would be there during the summer months as a state resource, but the winter months, that station would be essentially shut down and or dark. But we do utilize the Amador agreement to ensure that that area has a fire engine. And in many ways, throughout the county, in the summer months, the Morgan Territory area can have up to 2 fire engines there. And in the winter months, they have 1. And that's great because that provides actually for a rural area, actually an elevated level of crease that most rural areas have within the county. Furthermore, we do have partner agencies, East Bay Regional Parks, CalFire, San Ramon Valley. They do surround you. So at the top of Morgan Territory, it borders into the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District area. And CalFire is obviously right there at Sunshine. And then Contra Costa County, as you continue down Marsh Creek Road, is right down the street. We work together on automatic responses and or through requests through what we call mutual aid from outside agencies. We can request them if we need them. And you have seen the incidents that we do and the incidents that we use. We lean heavily upon not only Contra Costa, CalFire, and also San Ramon, but again, they are not your fire districts. We are. With that being stated, the district has always had a funding issue. This is a decade-old issue that we've been working very diligently to address. As I stated, we have 3 stations today, and we lean upon CalFire through contract, but we should have no less than 6 in addition to CalFire, which would make it 7. And we know over 20 years, we'll need an additional 3 stations for a total of 9. And if you include CalFire, that would be 10. And we've been working over the past 4 years of checking feasibility on all things outside of a tax to be able to increase service levels. We have been able to do a good job to live within our means, to take care of long-term planning. We are sustainable at 3 stations. And we have measures in place that if we need to ask for revenue enhancement to go in front of the folks. We have the engineering reports done, but it is the last case that we want to use. Most recently over the last year, the last piece of feasibility we're looking at is potential consolidation with the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District. And we're going through a multi-phase study. There's actually 3 steps for it to be approved through LAFCO for us to annex into potentially CalFire. We're in phase 2 right now, and we anticipate that the study will be completed in July of 21. So in the next couple of months, we'll figure out if it's feasible or not. And the fire board will consider a resolution of intent to approach LAFCO to annex into Contra Costa Fire, as long as Contra Costa Fire agrees that study shows that there's economy to do so. If that were to occur, we'd have a 6-month process with LAFCO that would have to finally approve that transaction being done. And there would be about a 6-month process of transferring property, and that being done. So it could take us all the way until mid-2022 to get it done. With that being said, as we're looking at 2 different paths, consolidation or not consolidation, to open 1 and or 2 stations in 2022, leaning upon district revenues, potentially Measure X, which was a half-cent countywide sales tax that passed, and or consolidation. So I think we have a path independent of a revenue enhancement to finally get more engine companies into the system, which will better serve not only jurisdiction, but also you. So that's kind of an overview on the fire district. We'll hold questions until Chief Marcucci gets through the end. But really today, again, this is about community risk reduction and prevention. I want to hit on the hydrants. So here's the thing. There's a lot of questions about the fire hydrants on the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory corridor. What I will tell you is this, is the district is working with the water district, we're working with the association. The fire district does not believe that we have an operational issue and or concerns around those hydrants. And I think what's most importantly to highlight is this. The concerns around these hydrants are coming to us not because of something that happened operationally. We've never had any operational challenges. We haven't had any operational issues. With that being said, is there are questions, and I want to stress, I believe that the questions have merit. There's some miscommunication or misunderstanding about what the true issues are. And furthermore, what I want folks to know is that the fire hydrants on Morgan Territory are very sporadic. Not only are they very sporadic, they're not like a municipal water system in Brentwood and Oakley where you're going to find them every 500 to 750 feet. We know when we go to that area that there may not be water. And for that reason, we bring thousands upon thousands of gallons of water with us, and we utilize those hydrants to fill our water tenders. We do not use them to directly connect to ley line to go fight a fire. We use water tender operations in that area because it's very sporadic. We'll bring 3 and or 4 water tenders with us. And when CalFire responds, they have 1,000 gallons of water on their back. But again, it's very intermittent. So today, we are also working with the fire district, with the water district. We did identify last week that there are hydrants of which they have mechanisms on them. There are locking mechanisms on the caps that they're only supposed to be on what each hydrant has 2 caps. It has a 2.5 and a 4-inch. There are only supposed to be mechanisms on the 2.5-inch. Sporadically, there's anywhere between 1 to 4 hydrants that I'm being told that have a locking mechanism on the 4-inch. The water district was supposed to begin yesterday, and if not by the end of next week, to remove the locking mechanism on the 4-inch, and I'll explain why that's important as we move forward. But again, they're very sporadic at best. We don't rely on them as a primary offense. When we remove the 4-inch cap on all of the hydrants, which should be done as early as today and or next week, every fire engine in the nation can hit those hydrants. And if the 2-inch has a mechanism on it, it's irrelevant. And so this is the thing I want to stress with you. These conversations I'm having, I've had them with the water district, CalFire, CalFire, San Ramon Valley. We do not have operational concerns in regards to those hydrants. I know that there are concerns with the residents, and the reason it's important to them, it's important to me. I think where my concern lies is that we have never had an incident with those hydrants. We are prepared to respond to those hydrants right now, yesterday, and tomorrow. And if there's anything that's going on with those hydrants, we have workarounds and contingency plans in place. And so I just want to acknowledge that there's some things that need to be looked at. There's some things that we need to do. But as the fire district, we think we're well positioned to manage incidents independently of those hydrants, although we want to rely on the hydrants. So we'll be cleaning that up over the next week. I'll take questions on that once we get through, if there are any. And I do appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this confusion or misinformation. But from the fire district side, all fire partner agencies, we feel we're very well positioned to respond yesterday, today, and tomorrow. With that, I want to introduce Fire Marshal Steve Albert. His job is primarily to handle all things community risk reduction. So he is the fire marshal. He directly reports to me. His job is to do everything from community risk reduction, plan review, investigations, and inspections. And we do work in cooperation with CalFire. And again, he'll cover prevention measures, talk about defensible space and inspections, weed abatement, methods of hardening your home, and highlight the ways in which we're really trying to interface with the Morgan Territory Association, from CERT to a FireWise community. And he'll also provide other clarity on other things. So Chief Albert, are you there? If so, the floor is yours.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chief. So as the Chief says, we'll start off with mainly prevention measures. Prevention measures should be not only just looked at right now as we enter in the fire season, but should be looked at all throughout the year. We know that the time for preparing for a wildfire and hardening your home is now, and it could never be soon enough to start getting your home ready for that. There are three ways your home can be exposed to wildfire: either through direct flames from a wildfire, or burning of a neighbor's home, radiant heat from a nearby burning plants or structures, and flying embers. Those flying embers from a wildfire can destroy homes all the way up to a mile away and are responsible for the destruction of most homes during a wildfire. I would like to say that all this information I'll be sharing today is available, and if you go to www.readyforwildfire.org, CalFire has a lot of great information and tools out there that we're going to cover kind of today. So when it comes to defensible space and weed abatement, in the area of Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, that is considered what we call a state response area, or SRA. So you do have a little bit different requirements when you're up in that area. When you're in the SRA area, we are looking at more of a defensible space to protect your property from anywhere between 0 feet all the way up to 100 feet away. There are additional actions that can be taken, but at a minimum, this is what, in our partnership with CalFire and with us, that you are inspected to and you're held to that same criteria. So anywhere between 0 to 30 feet, we're looking at removing all dead plants, grass, and weeds and vegetation. Remove any dead or dry leaves and pine needles from your yard, roof, and rain gutters. Remove branches that hang over your roof and keep dead branches at least 10 feet away from your chimney. Trim trees regularly to keep branches a minimum 10 feet from other trees and 10 feet off of the ground. Relocate any wood piles out to 30 feet away from your structure or your property. And then remove any or prune flammable plants and shrubs near the windows. Remove vegetation and items that could catch fire around and under the decks. And create a separation between your trees, shrubs, and items that can catch fire, such as patio furniture and wood piles and swing sets. That distance between 30 to 100 feet, we look for and we ask that you cut or mow your alien grass down to a maximum height of 4 inches. Create a horizontal space between the shrubs and the trees. Create vertical space between grass, shrubs, and trees. Remove all the fallen leaves, needles, twigs, bark, cones, small branches as much as you can. Those logs and stumps embedded in the soil should be removed as well. And then outbuildings and liquid propane gas storage tanks should have 10 feet of clearance to bare soil around them to help protect those. And we're looking at your address numbers that are visible from the street so we can easily identify the property. and then making sure that your chimney actually has a spark arrestor to trap any of those sparks that are going on. So that kind of covers our defensible space weed abatement. In our program, CalFire goes out and does those inspections. And what would happen is if you are found to be in non-compliance, they would refer them to our agency, which then we would follow up with that homeowner to bring into compliance. In our mechanisms and ways, ultimately, we can go through a process where we can have a abatement contractor go out, make these necessary preventative actions, and then we can actually go back and lien the property to recoup that cost of what it took to provide that service. So I highly encourage you, again, throughout the year, definitely right now, we have a date of May the 16th for our area in East Contra Costa to become in compliance. After that point in time, inspections will begin and we'll start taking complaints from different property owners if they do see something that needs to be addressed. When we talk about home hardening, again, all information can be found on CalFire's. We're talking about replacing the roof when you have to with fire resistant Class A roof materials, blocking any of the spaces between your roof covering and sheathing, install non-combustible corrosion resistant metal gutters to prevent the accumulation of leaves and debris. Again, making sure your chimney is non-combustible and has a spark arrestor. Cover all vent openings with non-combustible corrosion resistant metal mesh. Caulk and plug gaps greater than 1/16 of an inch around exposed rafters and blocking to prevent ember intrusion. Inspect your exterior siding for dry rot gaps, cracks, and warping. And then install weather stripping gaps around the windows and doors to prevent that intrusion as well. Now, these are our preventative measures. Now I'm going to move into our pre-evacuation tips. So once this actually occurs, and now we actually have an event going on, some of the things that you should be considering at that point in time is getting ready in case an evacuation order is called for. Some of these things should include shutting all windows and doors and leaving them unlocked. Remove any flammable window shades, curtains, and closed metal shutters. Remove lightweight curtains. Move flammable furniture to the center of the room away from the windows and doors. Shut off the gas at the gas meters and or your propane. Leave your lights on so firefighters can see your house under smoking conditions. Shut off your air conditioning. Move the propane barbecue appliances away from the structures, and connect a garden hose outside on the water valve. So if a firefighter does arrive, and he can grab the hose and quickly knock down something. Don't leave the sprinklers on and run to wet down the lawn or your area out there. All that's actually going to do is reduce the water pressure available for the area. So we ask that you not do that. Make sure you have your emergency supply kit ready to go in your vehicle, and then have your vehicle backed into near your house so you can actually leave in an emergency situation there. So some of the programs that we've been working on that actually kind of go hand in hand with both disasters and also with these preventive measures is one is we've been working with the Morgan Territory Community Association and a number of different community members up there to form up what's called a CERT program or community emergency response teams. This is a great program. It's nationally recognized. It's a FEMA program that teaches members what to do before, during, and after the hazards of a community event. CERT team is defined and does not include any emergency response in any capacity, but it does include and educates volunteers about disaster preparedness that may impact their area, and trains them in the basic disaster response skills, such as fire safety, light search and rescue, team organization, disaster medical operations. And CERT offers a consistent nationwide approach to volunteer training and organization that professional responders can rely on during disasters, allowing us to focus on more complex tasks. And the preventative side of it, there's also what's called a Community Firewise program. And Community Firewise is a NFPA or a National Fire Protection Association program. And this one teaches people how to live with wildfire and increase their home's chance of survival through those proactive actions. We encourage neighbors to work together to reduce loss and damages. And a community wildfire risk assessment is an important step in this FireWise program. It's a tool that helps the residents and the community to better understand what the wildfire risks are, and we engage in them with the risk reduction efforts. We know that research has shown that, again, through the burning embers, that's a lot of times what is causing these spot fires or further fires that actually pop up downwind. And then we work with the residents to prepare their homes to withstand the embers, minimize the likelihood of flames or surfaces from touching and catching fire, and by fuel reduction within that area as much as possible. So that covers most of my topics. We will be holding, as the chief said, questions until after Chief Marcucci. I'd like to introduce Chief Marcucci with CalFire, who will be providing fire season outlook, the CalFire ramp up for fire season, and talk more about the Get Ready for Wildfire program. Chief Marcucci.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mike Marcucci. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations for the CalFire Santa Clara unit. I spent many years out at Sunshine as the Battalion Chief for Contra Costa County. But now my sphere is not only Contra Costa County, but Alameda, Santa Clara, Stanislaus, and San Joaquin counties for CalFire operations. So we'll start off with the outlook for fire season. And as most of you can look out your window and attest that it's not looking good. So our Northern Operations Center in Redding has put out a 4-month outlook for us. They do it every year for April through July. And so I just pulled that up this week. It issued about a month ago, and it'll reissue again probably tomorrow. So we're probably a day early on the newest news. But basically what it's telling us is we received less than 50% of the average rainfall. Again, no surprise to anybody out in Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory. And the green grass crop is starting to come in at below 3,000 feet. Sadly, a lot of the areas that burned last year in the Santa Clara complex weren't regrowing with the grass because of the lack of rain. So the good news is the significant fire potential is normal for all areas from April through July, which normally means that there is still a chance of a significant fire, but not an elevated. Last year we were in an elevated risk. So this year we are a little lower, but not much. That will rise a little bit as we move past July, as we normally do. The thing that's making the hair on the back of my neck stand up, which should also, I'll share that with you, is we've already responded to Mendocino County with our helicopter above the Boonville area, if you're familiar with Mendocino County, and they had a couple hundred acres of decadent brush and timber that was fully consumed, and that was 2 weeks ago. So that really weighs heavy on me and the CalFire management team, with the fact that we're even probably a little more ahead of last year with that, because of that almost drought conditions. And I'll talk about the drought here in a second to see what that looks like. So for the Bay Area, especially in the Contra Costa County, as we move into the summer, like I said, our live fuel moistures are already dying and dropping. So we are lining up for another significant wildland season. The good news is the Weather Service had come out originally about a month or two ago with a 30% chance of a what they're calling an act of God lightning event, like we had on August 16th of last year. They've somewhat backed off that a little bit. So that monsoonal moisture that normally causes those lightning events has backed off a little bit. So I'm hoping it continues in that direction, because like all of you, I am good never having another August 16th, 2020 again. So we're gonna hope for the best on that. Nothing we can do about that part, but we'll hope that the Weather Service tracks that a little more to our advantage. So for the state drought monitor that we've been looking at, for those of you that may know, may not know, there are 5 levels of drought ranging from 0 to 4. 0 being what they consider abnormally dry, 4 being considered what they call exceptional drought, which is like as bad as it gets. We are currently in Contra Costa County, we are currently in extreme drought, which is the 4th stage out of 5 stages of drought. So I would be shocked if we are not in exceptional drought, which is as high as it gets or as bad as it gets, probably in another month or two. So that being said, There's always concern if you're on a well, that your water tables stay in a good place. There's also those worries with the water district as far as the reservoirs go and all those kinds of things. So while we are not saying the D word publicly, it is good to know that that is being tracked right now. This data came out 2 days ago that we are, like I said, in extreme drought. So that does not help us, obviously, for any type of vegetation as far as fire reduction or slowing down fire season at all. And as a matter of fact, we just had a fire weather watch dropped on us for tomorrow through Tuesday for Contra Costa, more towards the below 1,000-foot level out through the valley, and that may go to a red flag warning. So fire season is here. I can't stress that enough to you. Moving on from there, what is CalFire doing right now? We are currently at what we consider our staffing level 2, which is I have 7 fire engines across the 5 counties. Sunshine remains staffed. They have rolled off of the Amador agreement as of a couple weeks ago and are now on the state mission. So they'll be traveling across not only Contra Costa County, but the state. Currently, 1666 is in Calaveras County on a fire that they went to a couple of days ago, and I was able to restaff another engine within 4 or 5 hours to get that engine back up to Sunshine. So very little time without coverage up there, and we will continue to ramp that up as we move forward. Our next staffing level increase will probably be in about 2 or 3 weeks. And I think it'll be sooner than that. We will move to 13 engines out of my 16 that I normally staff. And then probably by mid-June, we will open up the rest of them and be in full-blown what we consider peak fire season or staffing level 4. Currently, the helicopter out of Alma in the Highway 17 mountains is staffed with a crew. And for the first time this year, we actually have some state-funded firefighter hand crews in our unit. These are non-inmate crews. They're made up of California National Guardsmen as an agreement we have with the Army in CalFire to staff a couple of those crews out of San Jose. And in about a week or 2, I'll have another hand crew down in the southern part of Santa Clara County made up of our firefighters. So a lot of good things out there for us to be able to suppress those fires. And one thing I wanted to point to you next, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Look at my list. I'm going to put a website up in the chat here, if I can multitask this one. And this is our readyforwildfire.org website that CalFire has. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have already taken a look at this in your day-to-day. But for those of you that haven't, it will answer a ton of your questions. And I see that Tamara had already put a question up about plants and vegetation around the home. There is a button. I just looked at it while Chief O'Barra was speaking about for home hardening, what you should and shouldn't put around your home. All available down at your local gardening store. So you could easily plant some pretty good looking plants around there to help harden that home. This website is huge in the sense where it'll also alert you when there is a wildfire in a zip code that you put in. So obviously you would put in the zip code for Marsh Creek Morgan Territory. But if you also had relatives, a family member, some elderly parents that live out of town, you can also put in their zip code, so you would be alerted to a fire in their area as well. It also has our social media stream on there for our Twitter page, and it puts up any CalFire incident activity that is happening for our day-to-day updates that we normally update at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So a good place for information. You can have it on your phone. It is a web-based app, so it's not at the App Store or the Play Store. It is a web-based app, but it is set up to work off of your phone, so you can take it with you, which, of course, if we are having to evacuate or anything along those lines, that would be a pertinent piece of information to have along with you. So some good things to have there. It is a free website. It is accessible by everybody on all phones and devices. So please take a look. Got some great checklists in there. So, as we always tell people when we come around and do our inspections, there's always this little checklist of things to work on. And I'll end with this. As Chief O'Barra had alluded, the 3 things that CalFire is also hitting on: home hardening, evacuation routes, and fuels management last. So if you have to spend some money, I would suggest you spend it on the home first. Harden that home so that home can withstand the initial onslaught of a vegetation fire. While we are quick to respond and quick to get to the scene, we can only cover so much area so fast. So one of those things that gets us, like the chief had mentioned, was the ember cast that comes off of a fire to places we may not even be or even think that the fire is going. That ember cast can go. So hardening that home is huge. Your evacuation route, if you're going to maintain and do any fuel modification, make sure that you're, if you're on a long driveway or some of the roads like Oak Hill, make sure that you can travel down that road. What we found in the campfire in Paradise was the fire pinged on the road on the evacuation route and cars were trapped. So we could not get to them and they could not get out. So that evacuation route is paramount, that you can be able to drive down that not under fire conditions. And then finally, fuel modification around your property, especially if you have acreage, to maintain that 100 feet of clearance. So a whole package in there awaits you at readyforwildfire.org. And as always, Chief Helmick, Chief Albert, always there to answer any of your questions that may come up. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. You know, we are here for you out of Sunshine Station with our great cooperation with East Contra Costa. They continue to make that fire protection out there paramount by continuing to fund the contract. And we just want you to be able to rely on yourselves for a little bit to be able to withstand wildfire and to make your home a fortress against fire, so we can get in there and take care of business. So that is my presentation. I believe, Chief Helmick, we can move to question and answer. So I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you
for your time.
Yeah, well done, Chief Marcucci. Thank you also, Fire Marshal Albert. So what I want to do is I'm going to go into, and we're going to start by looking to address a couple things into the chat. Now, what I want to highlight, there are a couple questions in the chat, and then Alicia will help us field any questions that are out there through either raising your hand in person and or actually doing it through the technology. What we'll do is, what I would ask, I know that we have many members that are on here that are already participating in the Morgan Territory Community Association. If you guys can, if one of you can please put a link into the chat box that would direct people for info, where they can obtain info and contact somebody to get an introduction to the association, that'd be very helpful. That was one of the questions that were on there. What is it? How do I get more information? So please reference to the chat box, and you can follow afterwards to be able to get more information. I will be deferring to Fire Marshal Albert. There was a question from Tamara, Jen, and Margaret that I think Chief Albert can handle for you. So Chief Albert, why don't you hit those?
Yeah, thank you. And for the first question was, okay, removing some of those plants. I mean, we do know that some of those plants, bamboo, cypress, all those plants that actually have a very oily substance to them are the ones that actually cause us the most hazards and danger. And then as Chief Marcucci had stated, if you look on the Ready for Wildfire webpage, there is a whole entire section dedicated to fire resistant landscaping. And you could be looking and talking to your local nurseries, and a lot of the plants are highly recommended as being fire resistant, include such things as French lavender, the red monkey flower, California fuchsia, sage, lilac, garlic, and ornamental strawberries. Ice plants are always good. So there are a number of different recommended plants out there that, you know, are encouraged to be looked at. For further questions, again, look at the readyforwildfire.org. Has tremendous amount of information on there to help you be able to pick and identify. And then Jen's question for how do we ensure compliance? So as of last year, CalFire and, you know, our prevention bureau is only about 2 years old. So as of last year, we began to work with CalFire to identify how we can better support each other through these LE 100 inspections for the defensible space. So this year will be the first time that we have the ability to be able to work hand in hand. As they identify these properties, we will then move into that compliance kind of mechanism. We go through the entire process, and as with anything when it comes to the government, we try to give ample opportunity for the property owner to come into compliance on their own, provide the education so we can change those habits and behaviors so they understand in the future and it's not a hazard that we have to address every single year. So again, on our webpage on the ECCFPD.org, you can go onto there. There's a mechanism and way that you can actually input a complaint. We have an app-based program that kind of goes straight into our system, and it generates a inspection report that we can go out there and take further action. And then, yes, we do realize that during some of these events, of course, the PSPSs, when electricity does get shut down, it does impact the pumps. We are aware that we do work with in those certain situations, such as, you know, when we do have a PSPS event like we did last year, how do we gain, you know, access to water? We do work with Contra Costa Water District to make sure that those pumping stations do have a secondary backup power, so we do always have access to that information. Excuse me. And the last question I'll hit on from Katie is, who do we inform about gate codes? So there's one or two ways. We highly encourage, and I'll put the link up here as soon as I'm done speaking, but we highly encourage everybody. We have launched a program called Community Connect. In that Community Connect, that information goes directly to the fire department only. Is available to both East Contra Costa Fire and CalFire. And it actually pops up on our mobile data terminals as we're responding to that location, where we can have information available to us for pre-fire planning measures. It gives us information about hazards, special risk, if you have pets, if you have elderly, you know, people living with you, that all that information can actually be protected and put in Community Connect and only available to the first responders as they're arriving on scene. And that hits my couple topics there. And I will
Thank you, Chief CalFire. I'll keep you in staging for a moment. What I'm going to want you to do, because you were answering all those questions, if you can look down and look downfield a little bit to Anne Marie's question in respect to Clayton Regency perimeter. And while you're processing that, Chief Marcucci, can you hit the questions about the alternative routes of Morgan Territory for evacuation and also horses, please?
Okay. For Lori's question about the alternative routes out of Morgan Territory, other than the 2-lane to Marsh Creek and the 1-lane to Livermore, the issue that we have is the only publicly owned roads really are the Morgan Territory Road. Everything else off of Morgan Territory is privately owned. So to identify a route out of the Morgan Territory corridor would be traversing through multiple pieces of private property. And when we had the bypass road during the slide, that was through multiple agreements, through multiple private property owners to be able to get through. So the one thing we don't want to do is send you through a way that is to evacuate that is going to get you bound up at a fence or a gate that is privately owned and locked. And we did have some issues with that initially during the slide. So we have been working diligently for the Marsh Creek Road. That goes back to that evacuation route to keep that hardened. We have been working with the large animal rescue groups to be able to have somewhat of a control of horse trailers potentially going in. Are we going to be, sheltering in place with large animals to be able to keep the road open? Trying to coordinate that better. It's not a great answer, I'll be honest with you. The community is basically on a 2-lane road, and going to Livermore is usually not the best advantage. But there are areas that are predetermined out off of Morgan Territory for some large shelter-in-place areas, or what we'd call a TRA, a temporary refuge area, to be able to put members of the community, even some firefighting activities or equipment during the fire that's not directly in the path of the fire. So while we may say it is time to evacuate, we may move you to a temporary refuge area waiting for that fire front to pass, or we may wait to open up the road and then to be able to move everybody out under better conditions. So, but I encourage you to work with each other. If there's a way that you can find, especially if you're on the fringes and there are some fire trails and such that you have private property access to, those are great accesses. I just do not encourage you to not go through other people's properties because everybody's private property is exactly that, private property. So for Margaret, your question about how do we keep track of fire hoses? We don't. And so, for example, on the Morgan fire, I think we had about 50,000 feet of hose during the complex last year, probably very much the same. We try to pick up everywhere we go, but when we are frantically fighting fire and putting in hose is going to get left behind. Appliances get left behind, things along those lines. So your phone calls to Sunshine Fire Station is probably where that should go. And we will happily go out and pick that stuff up. And we don't want to leave it on your property. We never want to leave our litter behind. Does it happen? Absolutely. Will we absolutely go out and get it? Absolutely. We will clean that up. So it's a great question, and thank you for that. Chief.
All right, Chief Albert, Regency, the Clayton Regency permit, please.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. So again, just as we stated, the due date for compliance is coming up. They all have to be in compliance by close of business on May 15th. As of May 16th, if anyone is found out of compliance, we will begin the process to make the notifications and start putting additional encouragement onto them to bring them into compliance. So that is the process. Again, you can go onto our website, file the complaint as of May 16th, and we would be more than happy to follow up with them from there.
Okay, there is also another question on here. And again, I just want to reinforce that if you want to get more information, and I strongly encourage that you reach out to the Morgan Territory Association. I think whomever put the information in there for the contact info, it is there. And I also want to highlight and forecast that on May 19th, the fire district will be attending the meeting in cooperation with the association. And one of the things we've been working on over the last couple of months is really trying to frame and create some clear delineation of what we do with the association and what we don't. In other words, how we interface with them. Obviously, we provide initial emergency response for all risk incidents. That's going to be fire, EMS, and rescue. But we are also working, as Chief Albert previously stated, about developing the community emergency response team and the FireWise community. But the association, to be clear, they do a lot of things that are not in cooperation with, and they are not part of the district. And, to be clear, there are some things of which the district has some reservations or concerns on, respectfully. And so it is my job to ensure that we are very clear. We're going to be presenting a document May 19th that is going to be on the behalf of, it's going to be from the district, but it will be supported by San Ramon, Contra Costa, and CalFire, executed through me, to just be clear about what we do and how we interface with the association, and the areas of which we don't, and areas of which we want to educate and inform people to be careful of if they're working outside and it's not representing the fire district. So that will be happening at May 19th, and we're looking forward to that opportunity and working with them. But that information is there. And so I do appreciate the group. I appreciate all the citizens collaborating and communicating in the attempt to make a safer community. And I think we're making great strides in doing so. All right, I'm going through here real fast. I just want to make sure that we've hit on everything thus far. What I want to do is not leave it to the chat for those that don't want to exercise it. I want to take a brief moment, very specifically to hitting anything that we brought up and or did not, to myself, Fire Marshal Albert, Chief Marcucci. And then once we've satisfied those, then we are going to be transitioning on to Lieutenant Wooden. Anybody have questions? Okay, I'm not hearing any, and this will be not the last opportunity. So continue those thoughts. Just as a respective, a time check, we're at 11 o'clock. This is scheduled till noon, but Q&A is important for us. So Lieutenant Wooden, the floor is yours.
Hey, Chief. So I'm Lieutenant Wooden. I run the Valley Station, which encompasses the Morgan Territory area. Obviously, as I was introduced earlier, I'm new to this area. I've only been assigned to the station house for a month. I am not new to fire and evacuations and dealing with those kind of catastrophic incidents. I've responded all over to numerous other areas, including the Napa and Vacaville fires. And I've been part of the debriefs as part of those. And I also work as part of our mutual aid team, which is trained in coordination with evacuation, with our Office of Emergency Services Bureau, and our search and rescue teams as well. And so I have a pretty good amount of experience in dealing with evacuations and major disaster response. I've worked hand in hand with fire, and I know that fire does an extremely good job at knocking these fires down and stopping them. But the one thing that can slow them down is when we start to do the evacuations, is when they have to prioritize life over the property. And that's when people won't evacuate. And then we're now into rescue mode versus having to start and evacuate and fighting the fire. So, when we talk about, the first stages, everybody here is doing a great job. They're pre-planning. You're here, you're listening, and we're all working together to have a plan. And the next thing is when the sheriff's office shows up and we're conducting evacuations, we're there for a specific reason. We're there to evacuate. It's time to go. The message will be clear. We are training this next month with fire in evacuation response so that we are on the same page with fire in regards to evacuation, and that our response is also very clear. I understand in the past that there was some confusion on some of that. We're addressing that, we're training to that, and we're going to make sure that we are all on the same page, and that when we show up, it's time to go. It's time to, people need to leave. And then once we prioritize that life over the property, then the sheriff's office is also working with mutual aid. We're bringing in other outside agencies, and we will then begin, doing looting patrol. We have road closures with CHP to ensure that your property is safe on top of that. So, we're not just abandoning your property. We're there to protect your property. And we're there to ensure that everybody's life is safe. Because if we're there for a mandatory evacuation, that means, and I see the question here, in terms of enforcement, it means that, we're making this area a disaster area. Everybody needs to leave because it is no longer safe for you to be in your home. And that means that certain laws kick into effect, that you need to leave. You need to leave the area. Your area is no longer legal for you to be in any longer. And we need to have that area clear because your life is in danger by you being there. We don't do that lightly. It doesn't come off. It doesn't come easy. But when that is, your property and your life is in danger if you stay into that area. So those evacuations are mandatory. I understand there was some confusion last time. There was some conflicting information. That's why we're training this next month. We're to make sure that that information is clear, that there's no confusion, and that we make sure that when we relay that information, that there is no hesitation and everybody's on the same page. So, and again, like I said, we will also be doing looting patrol and everything on the heels of that, so that we protect your property on as well. Just reading some of the questions here. Yes, so when it says that there was a suggestion being mandatory versus suggestion, I understand there was some confusion. I was not here last year. I don't understand. So I'm not exactly privy to exactly what happened for that confusion last year. I did speak to the previous station house commander and some of the other participants, and I understand where that confusion is, and that's why we are training with fire to make sure that that situation doesn't happen again, and we convey a clear message on mandatory evacuations, and when mandatory is mandatory. And for gate codes, our dispatch center has all the access to properties for gate codes through the sheriff's office dispatch center. They have all the gate codes for us to get through. And then I'm going to turn it over to Meredith Gerhart, who looks like she just got in here, and she will go over the Office of Emergency Services response as well.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me all right? So I apologize. I'm doing this from my kitchen because my house is in various stages of being worked on right now. So I apologize for the noises. My chickens have figured out how to come in through the dog door. So periodically I will get up and push them back out because they can't leave once they get in. Thank you all for having me. I always enjoy hearing from your community and working with your fire agencies. You have a really engaged community, and I think that serves you well when it comes time to evacuate. My office, the Office of Emergency Services, is here to support and coordinate resources as needed. The community warning system also operates out of our office, so I'm going to speak briefly about them. So I'll talk about coordination and then look at lessons we've learned responding to incidents in your area over the past several years, including the role of the community warning system. I'll go over evacuation terminology and answer any questions you might have. Because I'm covering for the community warning system, it's not my area of expertise. If there's a question, excuse me, that I can't answer, I'm going to ask you to submit those directly to CWS if I can't answer it, and I will put their information in the chat box when I get there. OES coordinates by supporting the incident commander anytime a fire needs additional resources, such as evacuation support, sheltering, public messaging. What this means during fire season is that we are actively monitoring fire weather watches, red flag warnings, as well as all the other associated seasonal risks. So power outages planned or unplanned, wind events, air quality, drought, extreme heat, all of these things seem to come down the pipe around the exact same time. We've seen how these seasonal risks escalate quickly. Even when a fire weather watch or a red flag warning hasn't been issued, these things tend to pile up and events unfold quickly the hotter and drier it gets. Knowing this, I want to empower all of you not to wait for the message or the warning. If you feel threatened, if you smell smoke, if you're not sure, evacuate. Don't wait for us to tell you what to do. You may have better situational awareness than anyone else in that moment. Call 911 once you've reached safety and check the community warning system website to see if your area has in fact been evacuated, but don't wait. Our community warning system, the alert and warning platform for our county, works closely with law and fire year round, not just during fire season. They're ready to implement a warning for an evacuation order at a moment's notice. You will not hear from the community warning system unless you need to take a protective action. They're not going to communicate with you if there's traffic or someone's dog is loose or I don't know what else. They'll only contact your address if you need to either shelter in place or evacuate. You can register up to 3 addresses if you haven't already registered for the community warning system. I've registered my parents in Rossmore so that I get alerted if anything is affecting their life safety, as well as my kids' school. The caller ID in the past, when you get a message from the community warning system, it's been a series of all zeros. That's changed this year. And the new message will come from a text number that's 925-655-0195. So if you had added the all zeros into your caller ID as a community warning system prior to this year, it's time to update that. And I will put the CWS website in the text in the chat right now. Thanks,
Okay.
Lieutenant Whitten.
Okay, so what I would like, I'm sorry.
Not done. That's okay.
Yeah, so what I want to do.
We're going to go over.
I'm sorry.
Should
Go
we
ahead.
go over terminology?
Go for it.
Evacuation terminology. So when an incident commander sees that residents need to leave for your safety, they'll reach out to CWS. They'll request an evacuation order for a specific area. The warning system will work with the incident commander to identify the geographic limitations of that area. So if you're not in that area, you won't get alerted. You won't be asked to leave. If you feel unsafe, you still might leave. If you have any doubt about whether you're in that area, contact CWS. Law enforcement, Lieutenant Whitten's crew, may or may not be able to go door to door. That should not be your cue to leave. We need you to register and to maintain situational awareness. So don't be waiting for law enforcement to knock on your door. You all know, as we've seen in the past couple of years, that a situation can change really fast. Nobody wants to have to implement an evacuation order or warning. It's a colossal pain in the neck, but if it comes, it's because you need to leave. One of the takeaways from last August, was that it was really frustrating how long it took to repopulate the area. It may take a while before you're allowed to return home. It feels like it's taking forever. We talked about this a little bit at the after action for that event. What's happening on the back end is that every one of our agencies is working really hard, as fast as possible, to allow you to return safely. But we can't do it if it's going to compromise the safety of anyone returning home. So this is the hardest part of the evacuation. We ask for your patience ahead of time. We want you back just as badly as you want back, but please give your fire agencies the benefit of the doubt that they will, they're doing everything in their power to work as quickly as possible. We have learned, and we continue to learn with every incident, that there are things we can do better, faster, with more clarity. One of the big takeaways from last year, and we've seen some of these questions in the chat function, were the differences in evacuation terminology. So we're going to go over those really fast, and then I'll turn it back over to Chief Helmick. A warning: potential threat to life or property. If you have animals, if you have people in your household who might take longer to evacuate, if you have a lot of stuff, leave now. That's your cue to leave now. A warning is an order if you have access and functional needs or animals. An evacuation order, a mandatory evacuation. Nobody can force you by law to leave your home unless there are minors involved, but that's sort of neither here nor there. An evacuation order means there's an immediate threat to life. It's a lawful order to leave. The area is closed to public access. So choosing to stay in that event could result in loss of life and may impede the work of emergency management and first responders. Soft closures: the area is closed to all traffic except fire, law, and infrastructure resources. Hard closure: the area is closed to everyone except fire, law, and media. Residential only closure: the area opens back up to residents, and that's usually the first step in repopulation. I want to reiterate that we learn from every incident. We have to, and we rely on you to do your part. We need you to register for CWS. We need you to listen to the alerts, know where to go for verified information, and then give us feedback about how the system worked or didn't work for you. That's all I've got.
Very good, Meredith. Thank you. And Lieutenant Wooden, I really appreciate it, the collaboration and teamwork. I want to reinforce just what Meredith just said. There is not an incident that any agency or entity doesn't learn from, and we continue to lean into. Furthermore, I think there's also a misconception out there that that things haven't changed within the area in the recent years. This is not a people being new to the area or being unfamiliar with the area. If you look at what has occurred throughout the state in the last 5 years, the fuel behaviors, the weather, and the fire behavior throughout the state has changed dramatically in the last 5 years, and we're in a new realm. And so we are evacuating more throughout the state than we ever have before. We're collaborating, we're exercising the systems, which used to be called infrequent activities, and they're becoming very frequent. And so this respectfully is not unique to the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory area. Even right now, as we speak, down in Southern California and other areas of the state, people are experiencing this today. And so this is becoming a new reality. I want to go through and make sure that we hit all the questions on the chat. While I work through this, what I want to do is hit pause real quick. Alicia, could you do me a favor? And can you help inform and educate anybody if they are not putting things into the chat, how they can actively participate otherwise to ensure we're giving everyone the opportunity to speak?
Yes, if you do not want to put your question in the chat and you are on Zoom, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can click on reactions. It's got a little smiley face. When you click on that, there will be a button in there that says raise your hand or raise hand. That is how, and I'm going to show you right now. So I just did that. So now it's the little hand comes up on the left-hand side, and that's how we can see that you want to ask a question. And then when you're done, you can go back into that reaction button and click lower your hand. And then your question, you'll be done asking your question. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself by pushing *6. And then you'll remute yourself when you're done with asking your question and by hitting *6.
Thank you, Alicia.
So there you go.
I'm gonna punt back to Meredith real quick if I can. Multiple questions about strategically placing, sirens and or running respective tests. Do you want to reinforce anything on either one of those points?
A couple things, and I will ask specific requests for tests and specific questions about sirens to be directed to the warning system. We have a world-class system, a great manager. The short answer to sirens is that they are a shelter-in-place tool in our county for the most part. I'm going to let Heather Tiernan describe for your community at a later date why they're not optimal in wildfire situations. Testing, a lot of areas around the county have in the past done community warning system tests either with or without an evacuation component. Those tests and those types of exercises are usually the tail end of a long pre-planning process. And the value in those tests and those exercises is actually in the work that goes into preparing the community ahead of time. So they're usually accompanied by a huge drive to register people for CWS, a public outreach campaign, numerous planning meetings like the one you're having right now. And then at the tail end, maybe a test of the system, maybe not. But that is something that you can request through the community warning system. Looking at any of the other questions, the alerts with the wrong street names and locations, again, I will just emphasize that the community warning system does their absolute best to accurately describe an area that's been requested for evacuation. And just, we so appreciate the community's patience, understanding that the situations are dynamic. There's a lot of communication happening between Incident Command and CWS, and at the same time, fire behavior is happening. So it's not as though there's a point in time where everything is standing still and everyone can get the information out accurately, because there's nothing static about these situations. It may be that your street is not asked to evacuate, or that you receive a warning and no order, or that you receive an order not having received a warning. All of these things don't mean that the system isn't working, or that your fire agencies aren't doing everything they can to get the right people out. But yes, accuracy is absolutely a concern for the system.
All right.
Can anyone from fire elaborate on temporary refuge areas on Morgan
So
Territory
there's a couple,
Road?
Meredith, I'm gonna intercept here real quick. So I'm gonna hit on, so the temporary refuge, Chief Marcucci will address here in one moment, but I want to hit on two others. There was a question about locating people or houses and not knowing, how to make access or how to get in. And this is actually a bigger issue and challenge that we really want to interface. This is one of the areas we'll be talking about on May 19th at the association. Is, as a community, one thing that we want to really do before an emergency occurs is really take inventory, right? I mean, we should have a pretty good inventory of who's done well, respectfully, who hasn't done well on hardening their homes, providing defensible space, who's at greater risk than otherwise. Furthermore, how many people are occupied in regards to each of the homes, and those that are maybe their home respectfully isn't maintained to the degree it should because they don't have the capability to, and maybe we can come around and support those community members in helping them get their property prepared. But if an emergency occurs, it's important to know those people that may have disabilities, those people that may be just elder and are slower, that we know that they're a priority and they may need help. And so that is kind of down in the weeds, but on the bigger level, we're going to interface and work with the association to take inventory of not only the properties, the people, the weak links, large animals, how many animals, what are we looking at? And if people are out of town, how do we communicate and get these communication lists? This is the preventative measures on making a safe community. And we have a lot of opportunity now in a non-emergent situation to build these. So I would agree that having contact information, access and egress, knowing how many people are there, who's going to need help before the incident occurs. This is one of the areas that we will be working with, not only SERB, potentially Firewise and the association to reinforce as we move forward. Another question, a fair and a great question that popped up is that if a fire occurs in the Morgan Territory area, is it better to contact the CAL Fire Station or 911? Would it be faster? And the answer is absolutely no, never. Do not contact the fire station direct in a 911 emergency type situation. And there's many reasons as to why. If that is a non-emergency line. So if they're in the station, if they miss the call because they're outside of the station, they're working on the equipment, they're on the other line, it is not intended to be an emergency line. If they're out of quarters and they're not there, it is important that you call 911. Furthermore, understand that if you call them and report the emergency, they have to hang up with you and then contact the dispatch center and advise them before they can respond to get the regular response to go. So you've actually added a double layer for you, giving them the emergency information, and they essentially have to call 911 themselves and say, hey, we just heard about this, we're responding, send it, create an incident and fulfill the response. So always call 911, regardless of where we are. We all carry radios on us, they're in our engines. It doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing, outside the station, inside the station, or on the road. 911 is always your best bet. All right, Chief Marcucci, temporary refuge.
So temporary refuge is exactly just temporary. So the one that comes to mind as I was speaking was, for example, if you go down Morgan Territory towards Meadowview, there's the large old racetrack area down there. That may be somewhere where we just temporarily put people as the fire front maybe moves through. The good part about Morgan Territory and even Marsh Creek to an extent is we can get in behind the homes. We can do a lot of good firefighting wise to try to head off the fire. So one of the things that we try to do as incident commanders is leave the actual paved road available for the egress from the citizens. So to be able to, we may use, for example, the old access road out of the jail to come up to the backside of Leon Drive, for example, with fire equipment. That way we're not blocking up Morgan Territory Road to get the citizenry out. So if we get to a point where the fire cuts off our evacuation route, we may be able to have to take the community and put them into a temporary area. There's a big difference between safety zones and temporary refuge areas. Safety zones, the fire can't get you. Temporary refuge areas are areas that potentially the fire could come to, but we're only there temporarily until we can move everybody out. And I'm talking about a fire that starts right on the road and is right there immediately, not something that's a day or two out. We also use, for example, the preserve up at the top of Morgan Territory for the folks on the high end of the street and the backside of the San Ramon side of the hill. So those are areas that we use as well. But to Meredith's point, we try, and one of the frustrations we have is if we tell you, we make that order to evacuate, we shouldn't have to need a temporary refuge area because as citizens, you're following the order and you're leaving the area. Therefore, we don't have to worry about where we're going to put you, your livestock, your animals, your family, all those types of things. So, but we do have those plans in place. And a lot of those happen in the very early onset of the fires. We're trying to move people out. So we do have those in mind as we're traveling up and down the road, but a lot of them appear to us as we're driving along, and we will identify those and move folks into there if we have to, if fire conditions dictate. I hope that answers your question.
Very good, Chief Marcucci. And the question came in just recently about guidance and address markings Chief Albert placed in there. The question was how big do the numbers need to be, etc. And the address numbers should be displayed in contrasting colors. So you'll see the sign being green, the letters being white, that minimum of 4 inches in size, readable, and from the street or access. And this is important, making sure it's accessible from both directions on the roadway. All right. So that is, I'm telling you, for access to and response, this shaves minutes at times. It'd be very nice if you drive all the way up Morgan Territory and all the way back down and all of the lateral streets that are coming off it. Make sure that the address signs are visible, reflective signs and or illuminated signs. All right. So that's very important. That's a great question. There was a secondary question also about getting assistance and making sure that how do we get other people to be able to, family members and others, contact information regarding where you live, if you're alone, and get them notified. Meredith added, in there that if you contact the 925-655-0111, that they can walk you through the process for additional contacts. And one of the things that we always do when we do these presentations is we use acronyms. It's like, that's the number one no-no, right? When we're out there communicating. So we'll say CWS instead of community warning system. I appreciate the question. It was a fair question, is what is that? And we do that. So if we ever speak in acronyms versus the full terminology, please ask us the questions. And there was also a comment in there, and I see Mike McCaffrey, his team, Hold Your Horses. They are a strategic partner with us for evacuation of large animals and preparation. Hold Your Horses is a great asset. Again, I want to make it very clear that they work independently, but strategically and collaboratively with us, right? So they are not a part of the fire district, but they have been working, I'm gonna say up and down the state, of coordinating. What we really respect and what we really appreciate about McCaffrey's team of Hold Your Horses is that they're very wise about how they choose to engage. They will never bypass an incident commander. They don't take independent action. They will not respond unless it's in coordinated effort with us. And they have a very strong command structure in regards to how they do it that pretty much compares their structure around how the fire department does business because of Mike's history and what Mike has done in his previous life, moving into what he does now. I do recommend all of you that are on the line that feel that if you do not have the capacity to move the large animals in the time of an emergency, the key word that Mike put there in the chat was pre-plan. Pre-plan. All of you, again, that have large animals, not only need to have a plan for yourself, but also for your animals. And you need to think about where you would take them, what you would do. And I'll tell you that Mike and his team have a wealth of knowledge, a ton of information to be able to help you pre-plan, what they're doing. So what I would like to do real quick is, hey, Mike, I'm going to give you like 1 minute. If you can keep it to 1 minute and just reinforce that if you like.
Okay, folks, for starters, Hold Your Horses, we are local community-based livestock emergency evacuation team. We're all volunteer, we're non-government, we're non-profit. We provide assistance to livestock animal owners that are overwhelmed in an emergency situation. We provide initial transport out of harm's way. We also offer sheltering assistance and follow-up welfare care. As Chief graciously said, thank you so much for the kind words. My fire service background gives me the opportunity to represent Hold Your Horses as the fire liaison and as the agency rep. I had a big presentation planned. I'm going to pare it down a lot to fit it in. For starters, the Hold Your Horses supports our agency's goals and operations. So there's a couple things I'm going to hit on here that affect us as well as fire. And the starters is when we were talking about inspections from a rancher's perspective, I believe that the defensible space inspections, once they begin, we'd just like everybody out there to remember that these inspections are done through the same eyes of the firefighting professionals that'll answer your call for help if there's a fire in your area. And we encourage you to take all the corrective measures that you can to handle the hazards that are pointed out for you. Private roads, address numbers are important to us. We can't help you if we can't find you. Private roads that run on or through your property, we ask that you maintain and clean around them. That allows the fire equipment to travel on them safely and quickly get to where they need to go in order to begin their firefighting operation. It also gives us the opportunity to get in and bring our trailer teams in to handle your request for evacuation. One thing I'd like to kind of reiterate here is that most of our rural properties have backup generators. Okay, and one thing that I'd like to speak to real quick is that that you have a backfeed switch installed on your generator. We're saying that this is extremely important because when PG&E shuts off the power to the grid and your generator starts, without that backfeed switch, the power your generator produces will backfeed into the PG&E supply lines, and that result will place any and all working with and around the power lines in danger of an electrical accident. Again, keep your combustibles away from your generator to prevent a fire during startup. Please install a sign on your electrical panel that you have an emergency generator. And if you'd like more information on that, PG&E has a section on generator safety and specifics. Again, a couple things. I talked with CalFire Battalion Chief Brian Giambroni last year and asked him how we could help our own community during the lockdown. He helped us with several questions and answers that we prepared 3 different informational PSA videos. Those are available at our Facebook Hold Your Horses Contra Costa site. Couple things I'm just going to touch with that are included on those, that for those in the community that have a water tank on your property for firefighting purposes, we ask that you please ensure there's clear access to them and that you have the right type of connection for firefighting equipment to connect. Standard pipe threads are not compatible. Please install your 2.5-inch connection with national hose or national standard threads. Also, there's a universal sign out there that if there is a universal usable water source on your property, blue reflective stickers on your address is that universal sign. In regards to the address sign, first responders can't find you if they can't locate you. Again, the importance of having that address sign on a with reflective large letters on a contrasting background is very important. Let's see. Dun-dun. So last fall with the Santa Clara Unit Lightning Complex fire, folks out there seen how fast we ran out of resources. So we ask right now that you start, to prepare your home and to prepare a plan for you and your animals to evacuate. Couple of quick things. If you have animals there, livestock, you're going to need to identify them to help in a unification process afterwards. This little item right here is in case of emergency. It has information about your animal. This item, if you throw a quick knot in your horse's mane, this clicks on, this is going to stay on and help identify your animal later. This is also a similar item for those that you do trail riding. Anyway, identify your horses right here. The quickest and easiest way, these are livestock markers. They're a grease type pen. Before you leave your animal to fend for themselves on an evacuation of you, use your whole side of your horse with one of these markers. Write your phone number or your address on one side, phone number on the other side. Use the whole horse as a billboard. The important thing is we want you to be able to find your livestock when the incident is done. So the last thing I'm going to ask here is that because of the resource shortage that we're going to have, preparedness ahead of time and making your plan, we've got a program. It's a buddy barn program. Folks that live out in Morgan Territory or the Marsh Creek corridor, try to reach out to other facility owners, horsemen, down in the flatlands near the Delta. That way you all have a prearranged place for your animals to go. So if you're up in the interface area up in the territory and the incident's there, the agreement is already made with the flatland barn. Boom. When you have the advisory to start with, that's the time to move your animals. Move them down to your barn in the flatlands. Same thing, idea, folks down in the flatland, if we have a water-related incident, one day it might happen, we might have a levee breach. That same agreement will be good for that barn on the flatlands to move their animals to higher ground. So thank you so much for the time. We're available for more information. Hold Your Horses, Facebook, Contra Costa. And again, thank you so much.
You got it, Mike. Thank you. And just some of the questions that are popping in. What I will do is I'll be working with Mike and Hold Your Horses in collaboration with the leadership of the Morgan Territory Association, and we'll get them in front of that group within reasonable time. So there can be more of a focus and expanded maybe presentation, a question answer, and get them better entrenched and pre-planned with all of you. So we'll build that connection. And Mike, the association contact information is in the chat. And so I would ask that you guys connect, work with each other to be able to do that. Furthermore, I just want to hit that there's been, direct messages and comments about last year in regards to addressing. And yes, Morgan Territory, 14 miles long. And I know that the addresses, the entire road, portion of the road, the upper, the lower, I don't think there's any fire agency, and I don't want to speak for the county. I don't want to speak for law enforcement. I don't want to speak for CalFire. What I will tell you is I think there was a clear understanding that communications weren't effective as we desired them to be. Furthermore, those of you that may not know, we actually did a debrief and a community meeting after that incident to talk about the sequence of events, the lessons learned, and the things we're leaning into. And there were a lot of things of which needed to be cleaned up. And so we're very aware and we're familiar what happened last year. My concern again is as we move forward is we have to take information as factual, take the incident for the incident itself, work the trust into the system. And then after the incident, if there's issues, we'll address it. No incident is perfect. That's why it's an emergency, right? We can plan all day, but it's an emergency. And then sometimes things don't go as planned. But I just want to acknowledge the fact that we're very sensitive and aware of the complexities of the incidents we had in last year. But we are all here collaboratively working together to make them better. All right, handle the Hold Your Horses. There's a question about pools, about are they considered a reliable water source? The answer is that they're considered reliable water sources is one of the first things we look to in droughts or difficult times where there's not water. But a permanent water supply, approved methods are what we're looking for, and that's we utilize hydrants and whatever that may be. So we also categorize pools as an alternate water source, such as ponds and water that we can have pumps and placing them into. And so to be clear, this is one of the areas with the association as we move forward to identify those alternate water sources. Not only do we bring our own water, we have hydrants, but we have alternate water sources and having them pre-identified and located. And are there blue dots at all fire hydrants? That's a fair question. One thing, blue dots you may find if you're driving down the road, they identify that there's a dot, identifies lateral to the dot as a fire hydrant. So when you're going down, it will illuminate and or you can see it. The dots do at times, even if they have been installed, if they get run over a bunch of times and or if they're older, they get removed. So it's important that we try to place those there. But another thing is we have a mobile data terminal systems in our fire engines. And we have GPS located and identifies where hydrants are too. So we do have some redundancy in what we do, but we'll be working with the water district to not only as they go out and work with us to enhance the water system, we'll also look to address blue dots. And Chief Albert already hit that, but I missed it. All right. We had a question. Yeah, as discussed earlier, there's a question about, it looks like there's locked hydrants. We're familiar with that. We're continuing to work through it. Thank you. Understood. We'll
Chief,
collaborate. Yes.
Can I address, I've gotten a few private messages in the chat with respect to the credibility of the system given last year's information confusion.
Sure.
I just want to reiterate that we hear the frustration. It was not an ideal situation. I know this isn't an excuse, but everyone was safely, I mean, the situation did end up safe for everyone. And what I will say is that our community warning system is a world-class system. Any county in the state would kill to have our system. It's more closely monitored. They follow the science. They really work closely one-on-one with incident commanders. So with respect, I absolutely hear the frustration on the part of community members who maybe didn't hear as clear a message as they could have. Every evacuation is a learning experience. Those mistakes won't be made again. A whole different set of mistakes will be made next time, and we'll learn from those too. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater by ignoring the next time you hear a message, and don't not sign up because you've heard that the system doesn't provide reliable information. It is the county alert and warning system. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Meredith. So I think we've made a pretty good attempt. I think we've done well addressing all the questions in the chat. I do see, it appears we have folks with their hands raised. And
if I can interject, Meredith. Oh, perfect. Meredith removed her hand. And then Kathleen, you had your hand up. Kathleen Ingram, did you have a question? Hold on, let me unmute you. Hold on, so okay, you're unmuted, Kathleen, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand, but since it raised, I thought of one question is, these fire hydrants, do the firefighters use the 4-inch or the 2-inch? It sounded like the Hold the Horses guy said, if you have private property with water, make sure you have a 2-inch availability connection, I guess it's called. But I think they said the 2 inches were locked at ours and the 4 inches open. So which one is used?
so look, the clearest answer is we can use either, but for water supply, we use the 4-inch. And so, yeah, so we use the 4-inch. I think the point is that, and I think everyone agrees, the ability to have access to both of them is important, and we're not dismissing that. But primarily for water supply for fire operations, the fire department utilizes the 4-inch.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Chief, if I can add in there, anytime that you go through the process and you go through the permitted reserve water tanks, as those go through the inspection process, we actually identify the 4-inch connection as the primary means to be able to have on your available reserve water supply.
Okay, thank you, Chief Albert. I think I see a hand raised. The Stories.
Yes, and I just unmuted your line. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys keep saying that they're 4-inch and 2-inch lines. I've looked at these hydrants and they all say either 4.5 or 2.5. What's the deal here? Do we not know what they are? I mean, it blatantly says right on the hydrants, on the caps, 4.5 and 2.5.
All of our, for simplicity, we do understand fire hydrants, and we have attachments for all of them. 4.5 inch, 2.5 inch. It's just for simplicity. You want to be technical, I understand, but again, all of our attachments are universal. The 2.5 and the 4.5, everything's universal. So we're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, is there any other questions? Okay, I also want to make clear, again, I just want to highlight, and I do want to do a time check. It's 11:47, we're going till noon. We do, and Alicia, I want you to confirm this is accurate what I'm about to say. We do have representatives from East Bay Regional Parks, Animal Services, Public Works, PG&E, CHP, and State Parks. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did not see CHP, and I knew that was a possibility, but the other agencies, we do have folks on the line that if there's any questions related to that agency or those agencies.
Okay. Is there any questions respectfully, although they were not panelists, we did want to have them here today to ensure that you have access to them. But I think what's also important to note is this. Although they did not present, they are agency partners or organization partners that we do collaborate and work with. It takes all of us to run a successful incident, and there is layers of complexity to all of it. But we do interface, we do coordinate, we do communicate in all things. And we have to work with each other to make it successful, not only from prevention, response, evacuation, all the way through repopulation, okay? And so is there any questions maybe for any of the agencies that are not here today? I'm sorry, that are here that we haven't had a speaker today. I'll check the chat. And you can also raise your hand. All right, we have a question. If we have the representative from the parks, Cameron Morrison, I believe you're on the line, that there's a question in the chat that says, do they have plans for creating fire breaks? Regional has cattle, which does a great job and help, but I don't believe the state has any livestock to help cut down with dry grass. Are you there?
I'm here. So for Mount Diablo State Park, we don't do any livestock grazing. All of the breaks are done with either bulldozer disc lines, or on the fire roads, we use the grader. That process started a little bit late this year, but we got on it on Wednesday. We're hoping that it's going to be a pretty quick process just because we didn't have much rain. So the vegetation hasn't had a chance to grow much. Out at John Marsh State Park, we do use cattle out there to graze, and that's a little unusual for state parks to use cattle for fire protection or fire breaks.
Thank you very much. All right, Alicia, help me scan the room, the virtual room, if we may, for raised hands. I'm monitoring the chat. I don't see any. And then if we don't see anything, I'll work towards conclusion and go to the order.
Can I say one more thing? I didn't mention this. In addition to signing up for the community warning system, we all know that there's potential for a power outage around a red flag warning. If you haven't registered for power outage alerts, you can do that through pgne.com. And that's going to be your cue that even if you don't get a fire weather watch or red flag warning, that one might be on the horizon.
Great, thank you. All right, Alicia, do you see any other questions? Hands raised, I do not.
No hands are raised at this time.
All right, so let me work towards conclusion. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, Meredith, anything else to add? Go to the order.
Nope, thanks for having.
Okay, Lieutenant Wooden.
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Chief Marcucci.
There we go. No, nothing to add. Thank you, everybody, for your time as always. And we're looking forward to a safe fire season. And if you need anything, please come by the Sunshine Fire Station or your EastCon stations in town. So thank you so much.
All right, Chief Albert.
No, nothing to add. And thank you to everybody who participated today, and let us know any questions at all. We're more than happy to address those as those come in.
Good, and I think that I'm actually gonna tee it up a little bit. There was a comments that came in real quick about fireworks being illegal. Fireworks are illegal in Contra Costa County. Please encourage and reinforce nobody playing with fireworks in their area. They are illegal, they're illegal, they're illegal. So safe and sane is not legal. Fireworks are illegal. So thank you, Tamara, and whomever else, Jen, I believe, or whoever put that out there. I really appreciate it. All right. Not that we want to expand, but is there anything good to the order from any of the other attendees that were available for Q&A? that did not speak today? All right. So let me conclude, and I'll kick it over to Alicia for closing. We still have a lot of work to do, and I really appreciate you guys all taking the time out of your day to come here. None of the agencies in here insinuate or want to demonstrate that we are perfect, but what we do want you to know is that we care. And speaking on behalf of the supervisor, our job and intent is to be able to lean into these challenging problems in the attempt to protect life, property, and the environment. And so, look, we take this very seriously. We are not dismissing that we have room for growth, but us being here today, hopefully through our behavior and over time, you will see improvement within our system and creating a safer community. And so please let me know, reach out to my district and or Chief Albert or myself if there's anything that we can do to be able to support you. We do appreciate all those in the community, the Morgan Territory Association, those that are running parallel to it or in the community, raising the concerns, comments, questions you have. You care, we care, and we are working through these things. So directly to Alicia, Dawn, Leah, we thank the supervisor on providing this opportunity on not only educating and informing our community. It's a privilege to serve alongside of you, and thank you for the opportunity. And that concludes our presentation, and I'll kick it back to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you everybody for joining us today. We know how important this is, and so we're thankful that so many of you took the time to be here. Just so you know, the meeting has been recorded, and as I did last year, we will be sending that link out. I will make sure that our trusted community members that can post onto your Facebook page and Nextdoor will have that information, so that will be shared. I will also be sending out all of the important links that were discussed today that you should be aware of. So that way you can keep and save those items on your own computer. That way in a situation, you know where to quickly get information that you may need. If you have any other questions that you didn't either want to raise today or that come up after this, you are more than welcome to reach out to our office directly or obviously the fire district directly, and we will get those questions answered for you. But with that, I just want to thank everybody again for being here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.